How can you navigate those political cycles? What does this mean for a country? What does it mean for you as an investor? Today's video is gonna get very strategic. It's gonna get strategic from a money standpoint, from maybe you also as a personal kind of living situation standpoint, and obviously for you as a business owner, it's gonna be very relevant. So let's dive in and take a deeper look in today's video. Hey and welcome to today's video. My name is Julian. On my channel, we discuss various topics around investing. Most of all, it's all about making you crypto fit. That means we discuss the beautiful world of decentralization, blockchain, cryptocurrencies, most of all, Bitcoin. But we also discuss stocks, bonds, precious metal, real estate, and many various other investments. And today, I want to discuss a bit of a more difficult topic because politics is such an emotional topic for so many people. It's very difficult to approach politics in a rational manner. Still, what I try to do here is not so much push my political opinion on you, but rather kind of look at opportunities during different cycles in political kind of phases in different countries, what this means and what do I look for myself as an investor, what are the sweet spots, and what would be very interesting to kind of look into. And if you do this right, you're gonna get your 100 baggers. You're gonna invest into things that can go 100x. And this works if you kind of look for those cycles. And so it's gonna get very interesting and you really wanna pay attention in today's video. Before we get started, quick pitch of my own company. If you own Bitcoin, if you own Ether, or if you own any other cryptocurrency, actually many others that you can stake, for example, you wanna check out Cake. Cake is a company that Julian, my partner, and I founded last year. We're now running for over a year, and it's all about giving you cash flow on your cryptocurrencies. So on Bitcoin and ETH and many others. And we provide by far the best returns in the industry. We're completely transparent about how you get those returns. So this is actually really exciting. It's a lot of extra benefit. Let me kind of link this up for you here so you can check it out. You can register for free, try it out, deposit some Bitcoin, deposit some ETH, and let us pay you. And we're really transparent about this. So yeah, this is definitely fun and it's definitely gonna provide a lot of value to you. So with this, let's dive into today's video, and I have my tablet ready here so you can actually see this and kind of understand this. Now, if we talk about, right, and we're talking about large political kind of directions here, right? So if we talk about large political directions, then generally speaking, and that's pure general education, so that's not really my opinion, that's just general education, we generally have three larger directions how people are politically oriented, right? You have liberals. Liberals are basically people that believe in they wanna disrupt things. They don't want a lot of government intervention. They don't want a lot of rules. They want to try out things. They want to be kind of in control for themselves. A lot of kind of innovation comes out of this, but obviously also a lot of people fall through the cracks there because in general there's not much support system there. Many liberals believe that people should take care of themselves. They should kind of work in smaller groups, and the government shouldn't take care kind of in too much of that. If we talk about the extreme forms, right, and we can always talk about extreme forms here, then the very extreme form is actually anarchy here, right? No one is in charge. Anything can happen. So this is kind of an extreme form here if you want to kind of see it this way. The next one is the socialist side. So socialists, right? Socialists believe that everyone should kind of have the same thing. Not really. That would be the really extreme form here would be communism. Right? So that's kind of the extreme form. But socialism is really different to liberals in a sense that socialists believe there should be a lot of government intervention, there should be a lot of support structure, there should be a lot of equality, there shouldn't be too much difference between rich and poor. Obviously liberals here, it's way more a meritocracy if you want to call it. So if you have better ideas, or you have better understanding of certain things, it's totally okay that you're the top 0.001%. And so humongous kind of difference here in ideas, right, between liberals and socialists. And then you have the last group, and these are basically the traditionals, can also be conservatives, right? And that's kind of the last group here. And basically the idea here is that you kind of keep things the same. You have companies that kind of rule in certain directions. Here many times, I mean, you could say, right, an extreme form here would be almost like a dictatorship. So it's basically stuff stays the same. There's not much kind of free election, if you want to call it, in extreme form. I'm talking about the extreme form here, right? In traditional conservatives, it's about, hey, this has been working for the past 50 years. It's gonna work for the next 50 years. We believe in the traditional values, right? Many conservatives, traditionals, they are not, they are pro-religion, for example, because religion has been working for hundreds and thousands of years. Now many liberals are like, hey, let's question this a bit. Let's bring more science in, right? For socialists, it's really about, okay, let's everyone look eye to eye. And well, these are like some really kind of, if you want to call it, three large kind of groups here, right? And so I just want to define this here. So now let's ask ourselves, if whoever is in power, which country, which group does it make most sense in as an investor? That would be my very first question. And maybe which country is it best to live in? And which country might be safe? Which country might be risky? Because at the end, you will always have, and you can look in any government around the world, right? You can look into North America, you can look into Europe, you can look into Asia. In each of those countries, you have a certain party dominance. The US is a bit weird here because in the US, there's only two parties, even though there's three kind of major political directions. The reason this is because many times in the US, these two parties are kind of mixed, which is also sometimes weird in how they kind of pushing their agenda, right? So that's why the US has only those two parties, because liberals and socialists are actually in the same party. That's where you have sometimes the socialists, like Bernie Sanders, for example, and then you have more of the liberals, right? And so that's just kind of sometimes weird. And then obviously you have the conservatives. The Republicans, right, which is very clear there. But then you have this in Europe, and you have here, you could also have, obviously here, you can have the extreme rights, right? Here, you could have, there's a lot of racism there. Not saying that, this is the extreme here, right? So I just want to make this very clear here. This is the extreme. So I'm not saying that just because you identify yourself as a Republican or as a Democrat or because you're liberal or whatever, that you are this. This is the extreme here, right? So that's the regular one, and that's the extreme version here. Just want to be very clear. I'm not stating that Republicans are racist at all, right? I'm saying that this will go into the extreme here. There's a lot of nationalism here. So all this kind of falls into here, right? And the extreme side on the socialism side is the communism side. And so let's kind of think about this on this direction here, right? Because at the end, that's what I would be interested in as an investor. That's what I'm interested in what country do I want to live in, what is safe, what is risky, and that's where it gets very interesting from an investment perspective. And here is something, so this is fact, right? So this is not much of an opinion here, this is really fact. Let's kind of state that. So let's discuss a bit of an opinion. So this is a personal opinion, how I treat certain things. Okay, my tablet just got stuck, but now it works. Okay, so this is an opinion. What I believe is that actually all countries, or all civilizations, if you want to call it, they are cyclic. And they undergo those three stages here over and over again. And so what I always believe is that a country goes from liberalism, like they try out new stuff, it works super well, you have like this ground and you start watering it and suddenly the stuff shoots out and you have these bubbles, right? And you constantly have this. You have this with tech, you have this with crypto, you have this with everything. So you try out these new things, right? You go against the mainstream, and suddenly this works. Now, because it works, you always try to conserve it, right? So you try to conserve it. You try to do whatever was before. Basically, now we get into the traditional conservatives. But then what generally happens is there's another group that gets really, really, really unhappy about some people having a lot and them not having a lot. And then, well, we always end up in socialism. Until people realize, okay, it's just being worn down. There's people who are lazy, who don't want to get anything, but they still want to get everything. And they kind of wear the entire system out. It just balances it out. It gets eaten out. And then, well, the whole thing starts again. Someone or something comes up with something new. And we start the whole cycle again. And so the entire cycle kind of keeps going, keeps going, keeps going. And so now the interesting question is, which countries are in what stage? And what makes sense to invest in, because gets very creative and interesting. Now, I believe, for example, right, and let's just pick a different color here to make this a bit clearer. Now, obviously, this is now all opinion, right? I believe that there's always here a very important cutoff. That as soon as a country goes from conservative to socialism, there's no way back. I believe here there's a lot of back and forth. There's a lot of back and forth here. So here the circle is not as clear. So people jump back between innovation, try to keep the innovation, but then other people innovate again, then you have to jump again. So there's a lot of back and forth here, but as soon as we cross a certain path, and we could do a very long video on what I believe we cross that path with. Now, I'm going to be stepping on a lot of people's toes, so that's why I'm not doing it here, but that would be something to discuss maybe in another video, where it gets very, very relevant on when do we move from this conservative side over to socialism. And what this actually means and why this can be dangerous and how this can be an opportunity. But so now the other part is this, right? I actually believe a lot of countries, that's where a lot of tension around the world is happening, right? So if I look at the protests in the US and I look at the protests in Europe and all around the world and where all this unhappiness is coming from, is because I truly believe a lot of countries are actually at this crossroad here. And people feel this. They feel there's only one way to go right now, right? And you feel, I mean, the US, you feel this the most extreme because you have the US is very extreme right now, right? There's no moderate opinion anymore. Whenever I talk to people that I consider normal, right? They are they're like, yeah, there's no one representing me. Like, there's either a total crazy right side or a total crazy left side, but there's no more normal anymore. And I feel this is because so many countries, not only the US, but so many countries are in this crossroad here. And to me, that crossroad is a very, very, very dangerous one to invest in. Because it's like, study history, right? Any country that goes this route of socialism, investments perform horribly, right? As soon as you have government constantly bailing out companies, it works out for a certain period of time, but quite quickly, the government is going to be run down into the ground. A lot is being sucked dry. So that is one part where I get very, very, very careful in the investment cycle, personally. Also, personally, living in these countries, I'm not sure if I would want to live there, right? And so one of the reasons, I mean, I went to school in the US. Back then, I felt, well, country was way more here in the conservative kind of side. I mean, also Bush was president, so was definitely more on the Republican conservative side here. But then also in Europe, I feel a lot of these countries are in this crossroad. And that's why I left there, because, and now it gets obviously a bit different, because probably the best time to live in a country is probably here. When a country moves from trying out all these new things, right, and kind of finding its way. Now, a country here looks a bit tricky because you still have crime, you still have a bit of chaos, you might still have a bit of an anarchy, right? For example, I think a couple of African countries are actually at that stage. A couple of Central American countries are actually here right now, right? Now you have to be really, really careful here. So South America, right? Maybe some Asian countries, right? You could be, obviously, could be China still being there, right? Could be India being there. Just kind of pointing out a couple of countries here, right? And these are countries that it gets very, very, very interesting to invest in. Maybe investing a bit earlier, right? When they figure it out, investing earlier, moving there maybe a bit later here, right? So that's living and that's investing. And I mean, there's a couple of examples, right? You could like you can look you can look in Africa. There's a couple countries in Africa that are figuring it out right now. There's a couple countries in not South America, sorry, Central America, right? Central America that are figuring it out right now. They are in this kind of process there. And so what you're obviously trying to do, and that's where it gets tricky. If you invest here, for example, right, you could go and try to invest in, I don't know, in really crazy countries, right? I mean, if there's ways you figure out how to invest into Iraq, or you're figuring out ways to invest in Syria, and you're doing this in a legit, legal, proper way, right? Cuba, there's so many countries that are in this stage here right now. Obviously, there's massive, massive risk, don't get me wrong. But this is where, from an investing standpoint, you have like the best, obviously by far here, the best upside. Now the risk here is still really, really high. Most people, when they move to a country, right, because you want to move to a country, many, many times they actually move after the stage here. They move here, and then that's obviously always a bit on the downtrend in the country. So probably moving to a country, you want to be just here where the country figured it out, but it's already going more into a bit of a structured, a bit more of a conservative route. Because at the end, it kind of gives you the best risk reward. So to summarize, and this is kind of just what I want to leave you with this. If you're open in moving as a person, and I'm very open in moving, right? I love Singapore right now. So I'm really happy here. And if Singapore does everything right, then I still think Singapore bounces back and forth between being super liberal, trying out new things, and being conservatives, right? So I think Singapore is in this stage here, right? And as long as they keep bouncing back, look, it's going to be a trade-off always, right? You cannot have everything. But I think Singapore is doing a really, really fantastic job. That's why I love it here, right? And that's why we're going for PR here. That's why we want to live here. We want to grow old here, raise a child here. All this is all good. But in case Singapore screws it up, I'm open in looking for other opportunities. I'm open in kind of, I'm not a tree, right? I can move. If you're open to this, consider those things, right? Think this through. What is the dominant kind of party? What's the dominant kind of idea that sits in a country? And it's never 100%. There's always back and forth, right? There's conservative voices here in Singapore. There's liberal voices here in Singapore. Obviously, you will always have also some socialist voices here in Singapore. But in general, it's more a back and forth between liberals and conservatives. And just understand this, right? But then also for the investing standpoint, I personally obviously don't think that Singapore is going to give you the same kind of potential returns as investing into a way more high risk, high growth environment that is in the rest of Asia. I mean, that's normal, right? Singapore is way more stable. The same is obviously with the US, right? So the US has a totally different risk profile than, I don't know, investing into some of those Central American countries or into some African countries or into some Asian countries, right? But you want to pay attention to this. The same thing in crypto, right? If you look at Bitcoin, Bitcoin obviously is probably really on this conservative kind of side. And you see this. Let's not change too much. Let's not innovate too much. So it's way more here, where many, many other coins, they are way earlier here, right? So just kind of understand this in this entire process, because it can be very interesting from an investor perspective. That's what I wanted to tell you here. I promised you that this is not going to get too political. It still kind of shows a couple of, interesting things. We could discuss how tech is generally pushing the entire cycle to socialism. Very interesting to discuss how cryptography is actually keeping it at the moment from moving to socialism. We could discuss what destroys innovation, which kind of groups, how religion plays in there. These are going to get topics that are extremely emotional. So yeah, we're not going to go too much into this for now. We keep this for maybe some other videos. So with this, I hope you enjoy this stuff. bit different than normal. If you want to stay in touch here, then please subscribe, click the like button. You're not going to miss out on those things. If you're listening to this on a podcast, drop me a 5-star review if you think it's 5 stars, and I hope it is. On YouTube, please upvote, like. On Twitter, leave me a nice comment, click the heart button, and LinkedIn and VK, the same thing. Again, check out my company, Cake, pool.cakedefi.com. Get cash flow from your crypto, and yeah, completely transparent, best returns in industry. I hope I'll be able to welcome you as a user. With this, thanks so much for watching. See you next time. Yours truly, Julian. Bye-bye.